You are now listening to Season 3 of the VMX Show. Hey now, welcome to the VMX Show, Season 3, Episode 1. That's right, we're starting our third season. It's been a while, but here we are, and you probably notice if you're watching this on YouTube, you're saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm watching this on YouTube. That's right. There's a little bit of a difference now. Those of you who listen to the show because you download the direct MP3, no worries. If you want the MP3, all you're going to have to do is look in the info for each video, and there will be a direct download link so that you can take the MP3 and do what you will with it. If you want to, put it on your iPod or just really listen to it at your leisure at a later time, that's still going to be a possibility. If you're one of those people that subscribe to the RSS feed and you listen to it in, Google Reader or Facebook Reader or any of the RSS subscriptions that are out there, you can still do that. That's still available. I will still be updating the RSS feed. Though it seems once I jumped on this whole podcast bandwagon, the whole RSS thing sort of went away. Not many people doing that anymore, but now you notice it's on YouTube. And for those of you who are scratching your heads about that, well, the reason it's on YouTube is because as of a few weeks ago, YouTube now allows videos to be any length for certain people. It has to do with a couple of different things, including how clean your account is. And when I say clean, I mean that you haven't had copyright strikes or community guideline strikes. Now, I know a few people who do have copyright strikes or community guideline strikes who got this, so there's a little bit of leeway there, but it also has to do with how long you've been uploading videos to YouTube. So some of the newer accounts still don't have it, and they're going to have to wait on that. But if you've been following the YouTube, and you probably have if you're listening to this, you've been noticing videos that are longer than the previous 15-minute, 30-second time limit. And before that, it was a 10-minute, 59-second time limit. So, I haven't gone over too much. I had the updates, announcements, and FAQ video. That was about 27 minutes long. But other than that, some of the Plants vs. Zombies went over 15 minutes. As a matter of fact, I would say most of them did. But for the most part, really, I try not to do really, really long videos. But then one day I was saying to myself, man, the VMX show, I could just upload that right to YouTube, and that would make it really a whole lot easier. So I just wanted to get that out of the way and talk about that. I would talk about the John and Joe show, but instead of that, I'll just point to the updates announcement fact video. That's 27 minutes long. Check that out. I talk about the future, possible future or possible lack of a future of the VMX show. Not the VMX show, the John and Joe show. The VMX show, I don't have to depend on anyone else being there to do it, so I can really do it at my leisure. but the John and Joe show does involve Joe, and there are complications in that matter. And I got to remember to talk to him about it. I'm going to give him one last chance to make this happen, and then I'm going to say, you know what, screw it. But I go into more details in that video, and so I recommend you check that out. So if you were worrying or wondering about the VMX show and you didn't know quite what was going on about that, maybe you missed that video or you didn't realize that was relevant, but go check that out. And that's another thing that if we ever do Season 2, it will be on YouTube like this. What I would love to do is have a video where you see us sitting there and making comments, and that way we can kind of get a little visual on it. You wouldn't see the movie because we're not allowed to put that up on YouTube, but you would, see us, and that would make syncing issues easier and everything. But the limitation is my camera, which only holds an hour of footage, and movies are, 99 times out of 100, they're longer than an hour, so there is that. Next thing to talk about is YouTube stuff, and once again, I did go into very much a little bit of detail on the updates, announcements, and frequently asked questions video, but I wanted to talk about, especially since I'm announcing something now that I haven't announced then, is the upcoming features. Now, as you're listening to it, is currently January 23rd. Maybe you're listening to it at a later date, but this is being recorded and uploaded January 23rd. So, we're getting pretty close. January 23rd is a Sunday. Next Monday, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow is the 31st. That's the last day of January. So on Tuesday, the next feature starts, which is going to be the Comic-Thon feature. And that's 28 movie reviews, one uploaded every day of a different comic book-based movie. And in case anybody forgot, the structure of it is the first 10 movies will all be based on DC properties, not necessarily superheroes, but definitely comics that were published by DC. The next 10 movies will be based on properties published by Marvel, and the final 8 will be various other companies. As a matter of fact, let me bring it up real quick, and I'll sort of, because there's a couple of different companies in there, and I guess I'll give you a little hint here, so that way you sort of know what's going on, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what movies. Savvy people will be able to figure some of them out. Let's see, I got a Dark Horse, I don't know who published the second one, then another Dark Horse, then an Image, and then another Dark Horse, and then I don't know who published that one, and then a Mirage, or was it Mirage? Something like that. So, it's a lot of Dark Horse stuff. There's some Image stuff. There's some other stuff in there. So that's interesting. I want to talk about that very briefly. That'll take up all of February. One video every day in February will be a movie review, and I did make a nice, cool little intro for it. A little bit different from the previous ones, but, want to keep it different. By the way, let me know what you think of the logo. I made a VMX show logo, and it is kind of just slapped together, but I've been on kind of this old-timey kick, and since I went through such a rigmarole to get, this is another old-timey word for your rigmarole, I went through such a rigmarole to get that font that says the VMX show. That font is called Plaza. It was used in the game BioShock, and I'm a big fan of BioShock and BioShock 2. And I wanted to do something old-timey looking, sort of like the Hey Assholes thing that I've been doing. I didn't do one this week, but next week you'll see a Hey Assholes. So there's that. After Comic-Con, starting in March, we're going to do the next playthrough, which is going to be Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals, which recently got a remake. I went and picked this up, called Lufia Curse of the Sinistrals, which is sort of a complete reimagining of the game on the DS, but I'm playing the original Super NES version. One thing that I am doing is I am going to be playing the European version, so it's going to be the PAL one, not the NTSCJ or NTSCU one, for those of you who like region speak. So it's not the American or Japanese version, but in fact the European version. And the reason that I'm choosing the European version is because there's some graphical glitches in the other two versions that were fixed for the European version. And another reason why I think it's even worth mentioning is because it's not called Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals, it's simply called Lufia, because the first game, Lufia and the Fortress of Doom, was never released in Europe. If you're wondering why I'm starting with the sequel, there's a couple of reasons. First off, it's a game that's much more suited to a playthrough on YouTube. The first game, very grind-heavy, very much like Dragon Quest, so I don't know if that would make a very amusing playthrough. Maybe one day in the future I'll do it, especially now that time limits are not really a concern. But also, chronologically, as far as the story goes, it's the first game in the series. So if you're interested in the Lufia series, chronologically it would be Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals, which was remade on the DS as Lufia Curse of the Sinistrals. Then the second one would be the Game Boy Advance one, which I think is called Lufia the Runes of Lore. Then there would be the original game, Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. Then the Game Boy Color game, which I think was called Lufia the Legend Returns. So that's what's going on there with that. After Lufia, we're going to go into the Ghosts and Goblins feature, and that is an anthology feature. We'll be playing all the different versions of each game in the Ghosts and Goblins feature. There's one that I'm missing, though, that I don't have yet, and I'm going to hope to, find like a really, really cheap copy of it sometime before I get to that. And that one is the second Maximo game, which is called Maximo versus the Army of Zin on the PlayStation 2. I've never seen a copy of it in stores. Hope to somewhere come up with a really cheap copy of it that I can find, but it was sort of a low print. It didn't sell very well. They were actually going to do a third Maximo game, but it was canceled because Army of Zin sales were not that great, and the studio that was doing it, Studio 8, they were closed by Capcom in 2006, so who knows, maybe one day they'll bring back the Ghosts and Goblins series, or, Maximo was sort of the evolution of that series, but a feature may have to end with Maximo Goes to Glory. I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. So, but if I don't have it, I don't have it. I can only play games that I do have, so like I said, if I don't have it, no big deal, I'll do a video on it if I ever pick it up, kind of like, I did with Castlevania Curse of Darkness and whatnot when I was doing the Castlevania anthology. But I know a lot of people have been looking forward to the super tough Ghosts and Goblins games being played by me on my channel on YouTube, so that's what's happening after Lufia. But Lufia is pretty long, so this is all very much on the horizon. After that is going to be another playthrough of Castlevania Circle of the Moon on Game Boy Advance. I know a lot of people looking forward to that. That's coming up on the horizon. And then after that, I talked about this in the update video, where I was thinking about doing another Let's Fail series. If you remember the first Let's Fail, it was Let's Fail It, I Want to Be the Guy, which is very popular, very fun for me to do. And I kind of asked people, I got a few ideas, but if you got any ideas for games to do, throw it out there. And actually, one game that I hadn't really thought of, and somebody suggested, a couple of people suggested actually, was Super Meat Boy. And I decided that that's really the best choice. So I got my hands on Super Meat Boy. I haven't really played it yet. I only brought it up once to see if it, works properly and everything, and if I could use my controller, which I can, which is excellent. So you'll be seeing that then. Now's about the time in the show where I would do your questions and comments, except this is the season premiere, so I don't have any questions or comments, so I'm just going to remind you guys that if you have any comments on the VMX show, any questions you want answered on the show, anything and everything, just leave them. For me, you can email me, NecroVMX@gmail.com. You can submit it to me through any means that you can, if you have me on AOL Instant Messenger, or MSN, or Yahoo, or Skype, or whatever. Or you could just leave it as a comment on this very video, and that's the easiest way to do it. Or you can send me a private message over YouTube, whatever you want. People have done it all sorts of ways. And remember, if I don't get to your question or comment, it doesn't mean that I neglected you. It just means that I didn't get to it, and I will get to it. And if 2 weeks goes by, 2 episodes, and I haven't gotten your question or comment, please just resubmit it, because I might have missed it. It does happen occasionally. I have everything on YouTube set up to email me when I get a new comment, but sometimes it's a little bit iffy. So that's what's going on with that. So I don't have a guest this week. I was going to set up an interview and have somebody come in and do an interview. I have a couple of really cool ideas for people to have on the show during Season 3, but I decided because it's been a few months and I have so much shit to talk about with video game news, major things that have happened over the past few months, so I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff. I've decided that I don't really have time to have a guest on the show, so we'll definitely have somebody on the show next week. But this week it's just me, so me, baby, me. By the way, I never got around to saying it, but the song that we started off with, I always try and do the DJ thing and let you know what I played, but I completely forgot because I was barreling head first into the show. That was BioShock 2. I think the song is called Little Sister something or other. Let me just... Here I have it here. It's called Big Sister on the Move, rather, not Little Sister. That's the battle theme when you're fighting the Big Sisters. BioShock 2, of course, an amazing game, one of the greatest games of 2010. 2010, amazing year in games. You had BioShock 2, you had Red Dead Redemption, you had Castlevania, Lords of Shadow, there's just so many amazing games coming out, and so many amazing games coming out this year. 2011 is going to be absolutely huge, and of course that's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about, so we'll do that. So let's talk about a couple of things in the news, in video game news, that I wanted to talk about. First off, Castlevania. Have to talk about Castlevania. Any news from Castlevania, I'm going to be all over that like white on your mama. So we got to talk about Castlevania. Lords of Shadow is getting not one but 2 downloadable content packages that are coming soon. The first one, and these don't have release dates just yet, but they're coming out sometime in 2011. The first one's called Castlevania Lords of Shadow Reverie, and this is what they say about it. It's back to the castle to help Laura destroy a new evil. It seems the queen slain in the first game was keeping some of the other creatures of the night in check. It is hard for a demon slayer to keep all those monsters straight, let alone figures which ones have other demons on lockdown. Okay, I guess they're trying to say, it's tough enough to fight Carmilla in Lords of Shadow, but to try and figure out if she's keeping something much worse in check. So you're going to be going back to the castle, which was pretty much the second third of the game, to be putting down some sort of demon that was being kept in check by Carmilla, who was the second Lord of Shadow. Now, the second one, this is tough for me to talk about because I don't want to spoil it. I know that there's some people out there who want to play the game and they don't want to be spoiled on the game's very amazing plot. I did put up the ending on YouTube, but of course people had the choice to watch that or not watch that. I know some people, a few people right now that are playing through it as we speak, so I don't want to spoil the ending, but this does expand on that, and this is what it says. The second one's called Castlevania Lords of Shadow Resurrection, perhaps the most overused title in sequels ever, but this is what Konami says. They say it will be bigger than the first. It picks up the story directly after the end of the game and gives more insight into what happens to our hero, Gabriel. I won't spoil it for you here, but the ending is very interesting. Resurrection also includes a final showdown with a very notorious enemy. Both packs are slated for early 2011 release. So we don't have actual release dates yet, but we'll be hearing from them soon, and that was great news. That news was actually broken on Christmas Eve. It's a nice little Christmas present for big Castlevania fans like me. But yeah, like I said, it's a real shame that I can't really talk about this too much without spoiling it for everyone, but those of you who had played Castlevania Lords of Shadow through to the end and watched that absolutely earth-shattering epilogue that took place, then you're very familiar with the idea of the sequel, what it's going to be like, and well, maybe you're not, but I'm certainly thinking of some really big possibilities, and I think that the gameplay might possibly be drastically different from the core game based on what happened in the epilogue, which I really should not talk about, so I won't. Had some news from Sega. Sega is, for a while they've been sort of easing back into the realm of consumer electronics with little devices that were coming out only in Japan, things like, little phones and stuff like that. They have a new video game, I guess for lack of a better term, console, but don't expect to see this in America or even in Japanese living rooms. This one goes in the bathroom. I call it their piss emulator. This is not really a new thing, that they have video games in urinals in Japanese bathrooms, which your control input is your piss stream. But they do have this, hit the targets, see who can piss the longest, the highest, whatever. All sorts of crazy stuff. I guess a real hack for that, like a cheat, would be going in with a super soaker and just, not even pissing. But Sega is now getting in on the piss business, so I don't know if any of their familiar franchises or anything will make appearances or cameos or anything, but this could be a possibility for fans who have waited a very long time to actually urinate on Sonic the Hedgehog. And that'll certainly get out some of our frustrations about that little bastard. So that's what's going on with Sega. So next up, I actually have quite a bit of Final Fantasy news. But before we get to the Final Fantasy news, let's play some music. It's been a little while, and I want to break it up so it's not just me talking for an hour. So here's a little Final Fantasy music. This is from Final Fantasy XIII. The song's called Deathmatch, and if you want to buy the official soundtrack, it's going to be released in a few days on January 27th. That's this Thursday, the release of Final Fantasy XIII original soundtrack. So there you're getting a little bit of news before the song. Let's play it now. Coming at you. Final Fantasy. What a great song we have there from Final Fantasy XIII Deathmatch. Official soundtrack coming out this Thursday, January 27th. So that's a big deal. Seeing a lot more Final Fantasy XIII soundtrack stuff on YouTube. People celebrating the soundtrack coming out. So you can finally own that on CD if you want to. Had a great soundtrack. It was really a great game. I know there's some people that were a little disappointed with it. They were, I guess, expecting something else. But, you know, when you don't have really any expectations, that's when you can really get the most out of a game, and I really enjoyed the hell out of it. I thought it was the most fresh and interesting Final Fantasy game in a long time. I actually would say that 12 was a slightly better game, but this was definitely a very good game. And this brings us to the big news. Some of you have already heard this, but if you haven't, well, now you're going to hear it. If you remember, back when Final Fantasy XI was announced, and everybody was pretty dismayed, they're doing an online thing, they're doing an MMO, a massively multiplayer online RPG for PlayStation 2, and after that PC, and eventually Xbox 360. And it was kind of weird. It's like, well, that's not exactly what Final Fantasy fans may be looking for, and having to get it for not only, PlayStation 2, which was the initial release, but you have to get a modem to go with it, and a hard drive. So big investment. Not everybody really got into Final Fantasy XI, and they lamented the fact that a Final Fantasy MMO was a numbered entry in the series. Thankfully, for better or for worse, we had Final Fantasy X-2 to tide us over. Now, they announced pretty much at the same time that 13 was going to be coming out, that 14 would be coming out after that, and that would be an MMO. Final Fantasy XIV released last year in 2010 to, I would say, massive failure. Very poor reviews, server glitches, major problems. It's a mess. Square Enix is trying to iron it out. And I said, in the meantime, we'll have 2 games coming out related to Final Fantasy 13. Of course, one of them was Final Fantasy Versus 13 coming out for PlayStation 3. But that, despite, being related to it, taking place in the same world, and having some of the characters from FF13, was an action RPG, so kind of a very different thing. And then we had a more traditional RPG, Final Fantasy Agito 13, coming out for the PlayStation Portable. That one being a traditional RPG, so sort of more like the next thing in the series, but it is on a handheld, and it didn't have all that much to do with FF13. As a matter of fact, it has none of the characters from the original game. Just sort of takes place in the same, sphere, you would say. So that brings us to the first news. Final Fantasy Agito 13 has been rebranded as Final Fantasy Type 0. Creator of the game said he really liked the Agito in the title, but he had to admit it didn't have anything to do with Final Fantasy 13. Well, it is still considered part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis series, which makes up, I guess you'd call it the compilation of Final Fantasy 13, much like there was the compilation of Final Fantasy 7. But the big thing is there wasn't going to be anything on Xbox 360 where I played Final Fantasy 13. I don't have a PlayStation 3, so I couldn't even play Versus. Agito is now something completely different, which I'm still interested in, but is not a true sequel. And once again, that is a handheld game. But they have officially announced Final Fantasy 13-2, a direct sequel to it. There is a trailer, which you can view on YouTube. Just search for Final Fantasy 13-2 trailer. If you're having a hard time, just go to my channel, look at my favorites. It's a pretty recent favorite. As of right now, right the second that I'm recording it, it's my most recent favorite. But you never know when that's going to change. A channel that I have that has it on is DualShockers TV, so you may just want to go directly to the source. But it shows a little bit of the ending of Final Fantasy 13, and then it shows Lightning fighting against some guy, and she's wearing armor, so sort of a different look to it. And, this is the first sequel in a long time. I mean, we had Final Fantasy X Part 2, and there were other sequels that were sort of weird things like Dirge for Cerberus, but that wasn't really like a Final Fantasy VII Part 2, and that was once again an action game. So, this is, they said it's going to be an evolved form of the engine from the first game. The combat's going to be more evolved. It's going to be very interesting. So definitely looking forward to that. Final Fantasy 13 Part 2. And of course, you're wondering about the release date. Well, I can tell you release date for Japan, winter 2011. Now, I know what you're saying. Hey, it's winter right now. It's 2011. No, that's not really what they mean. They mean like sometime in November or December. That's in Japan. North America, winter 2011-2012, so maybe it's like January, February. Europe also around the same time. So we really don't know much about it. I can tell you that it's being released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. I know there's been some people out there falsely claiming that this is a PlayStation 3 exclusive, probably because some PlayStation 3-centric websites were the first to break the news, and of course they just said coming soon for PS3. But if you were to go to the official websites, there's 2 of them, one in Japanese and one in English. The Japanese website is www.squareenix.co.jp/fabula/ff13-2, while the American version is na.square-enix.com. That's right, square-enix.com/ff13-2. It's a little different. The Japanese one uses FF13-2, while the American one is FFXIII-2. If you just look around, it's not hard to find. Both of them have those Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 logos at the bottom. One thing that I find interesting with the logos is on the Japanese website, it has a PlayStation logo, the PS3 logo, and then the Xbox 360 logo, which is great. And then if you look at the American version, it also has an Xbox Live logo and a PlayStation Network logo. So that's really kind of interesting. Don't know what's going to happen, but they both say coming next winter, and you can watch the trailer in HD if you want, or you can watch it in SD right there, or you can watch it on YouTube, whatever, but they are there. That's pretty cool. So they are definitely coming out to Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 sometime either at the very end of 2011 or the very beginning of 2012. So that's a big deal for Final Fantasy fans. Now, would you believe it, I'm not actually done talking about Final Fantasy news. For those of you who have long belabored a sequel to Dissidia, guess what? We're getting a sequel to Dissidia. Now, this is coming for the PSP, so it's on the same exact console as the original one. The original game, of course, was called Dissidia Final Fantasy. Now, this is interesting because if you look at it, it says Dissidia, and then there's a number, a 012, so 12, with like a 0 in front of it, and then Final Fantasy. They're telling you the way to pronounce it is Dissidia Duodecim Final Fantasy. You know, I mean, Dissidia Duodecim Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy Agito 13. I don't know where they're coming up with these words and awkward phrases, but that's coming out in Japan on March 3rd, and North America March 22nd, Europe March 25th. So March is the day to get your PSP out and play Final Fantasy Duodecim, or Dissidia Duodecim Final Fantasy. See, I still can't get it straight. Now, I know you're wondering what characters are in it. I can tell that the entire cast of the original Dissidia will be in it, and there are new characters. Now, so far, there are 8 characters announced, but we don't know whether or not this is going to be all the characters. So, that's sort of an interesting thing. Characters that we do know are new characters include Kane Highwind from Final Fantasy IV. He was the Dragoon. Gilgamesh, he was a sort of pseudo-villain in Final Fantasy V. He's going to be in it. Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII. Laguna Lore from Final Fantasy VIII. Yuna from Final Fantasy X. Prish from Final Fantasy XI. Vaughn from Final Fantasy XII. And Lightning from Final Fantasy XIII. I found Lightning's inclusion on her own to be interesting, since the creator of Dissidia at one time said that he would love to have actually Saz from Final Fantasy XIII in there. And Van's inclusion is sort of a given. The previous one had Gabranth from Final Fantasy XIII as a villain, no hero. Now, if you notice, that is heavy on heroes and kind of lighter on villains. Like I said, it's sort of different. They said that some of the characters that were on the Cosmos side, which are the good guys, are now on the bad side. Cloud and Titus definitely confirmed to be on Chaos's side, and Cosmos' side will now have Jet and Kuja, so that's kind of interesting. Some of the bad guys becoming good guys, some of the good guys becoming bad guys. Final Fantasy is a crazy, insane place, but that's what's going on. So, we have Final Fantasy Agito 13 for PlayStation Portable, rebranded to Final Fantasy Type 0. Oh, still for PlayStation Portable. Let me see if I can pull up a release date for you there. That would probably be among one of the best things to do. Okay, so just hang with me, and I'll try and also get a release date for Versus, since the last time I talked about that, there wasn't actually going to be a release date. So, Final Fantasy Versus 13 for PlayStation 3, still no release date. Final Fantasy Type 0 for PlayStation Portable. The Japanese release date, summer of 2011. No news yet on a North American version of it at all. I assume it's going to be coming out here. I hope it's going to be coming out here, because I was looking forward to it. But yes, it is now Final Fantasy Type 0. So that's interesting. And anybody was wondering about agito. What does that mean? It's a Latin word that means to put in motion, or I put in motion. So who knows? But it didn't have much to do with Final Fantasy 13, so it's Type 0 now. And Hajime Tabata, the creator of the game, says that he wants to make Type 0 into a series. So we don't know if that's going to happen or what that's going to be like, but that's something that, well, we'll see how the first one turns out before we say we're looking forward to it, but it's certainly an interesting thing. So speaking of the PSP, let's talk about some handheld devices and such. First off, I want to talk about the 3DS. The 3DS, of course, a very big deal, and it doesn't yet have a release date, I don't think. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let me check that right now, but I do want to talk about the 3DS because it now has a price, and while I'm looking up the possibility of a release date, I can tell you the price. Okay, it does have a release date. I'm sorry, there was a release date. It's coming out sooner rather than later. As a matter of fact, much sooner rather than later. In Japan, the 3DS will be coming out February 26th. It will then hit Europe in March 25th, North America on March 27th, and Australia, we're not sure, but sometime in March, we're not sure. Now, if you're wondering about this, what's going on with the 3DS? It does have a price. It's going to be $249.99, which is kind of a relief because we were all worried that it was going to be something like $300. This puts it around the same price as the Wii originally was. Of course, the Wii is now cheaper, which is all sorts of crazy, but of course this is a brand new console coming out $249.99, manufacturer's suggested retail price for the 3DS. And of course, we're wondering about the games. Now, one interesting thing about the 3DS is they were talking about launch games. However, to most of us in the world, when they say launch games, we're talking about games that are released on the same day as the console. However, Nintendo is claiming that the launch window will be several months, so... But, who knows? Who knows? But there is a long list of 3DS games that are coming out, and I'm going to just go through them real quick for you so you guys know what's going on with the 3DS. So if you're spending $250 plus tax on the thing, you'll know what you're getting into, and sort of an idea of what games are coming out. A lot of these don't have release dates, but this is what's working on. We're going to 3D version of Ace Combat is coming out. That's to be announced. There's going to be an Animal Crossing game. That's to be announced. There's going to be an Animal Resort game. That's coming out in spring of 2011. We really don't know anything about it, but there you have it. Asphalt GT Nitro Racing coming out sometime March in 2011, so I guess you consider that a launch title. Assassin's Creed Lost Legacy, to be announced. We don't know when that's coming out. That will be the first Assassin's Creed game, I think, to come out on a Nintendo console. Oh no, there was Altair's Chronicles. Okay, so that was... Oh, and there was also Discovery, so I'm wrong on that. But this is, another one. So forget I said it was the first one. I'm not too up on Assassin's Creed. I've only gotten the first one kind of recently. There's a Batman game. Right now it's just called Batman. Don't know anything about it, but there is a Batman game being worked on to be announced. Also coming out in March 2011, I guess you can consider this a launch title, BlazBlue Continuum Shift 2. So that's a really cool thing. It's a sequel to BlazBlue Calamity Trigger. Continuum Shift was the sequel to Calamity Trigger, and then I guess this is the sequel to Continuum Shift. So kind of a weird naming going on there. That's another sort of kind of launch title. Of course, that has only been announced for Japan, but I'm sure it'll come out here in America. A Blood Rain game called Blood Rain The Shroud, that's to be announced. Sometime in 2011, we'll be seeing a Bomberman 3DS. Bust-A-Move Universe coming out in the spring. Carnival Games, that's a working title. Of course, Carnival Games being one of the sort of games that you piss on for the Wii, that we wish doesn't exist, but now it's going to be on the 3DS. Cartoon Network Rumble, that's another game to be announced. Chocobo Racing will be returning with Chocobo Racing 3D. That is a working title, but we don't know when that's coming out. Also to be announced, Class of Heroes 3D by 3D. I don't know what that's all about, but that's another one coming out. Combat of Giants Dinosaur Strike will be hitting in March 2011. A Contra game, so far just referred to as Contra. We don't know what it's called or anything about it, but there will be a Contra game coming out for the 3DS. Cubic Ninja hitting sometime in spring of 2011. Daisen Raku for Nintendo 3DS. That's a working title. That sounds very Japanese. Daisen Raku, I guess, is a long-running strategy game series that has mostly been known for the games being on Windows. But there you have it. They've also been on consoles and handhelds, but I don't think any of those have released in America, so don't assume that's coming out. D-Blob the Underground, for those D-Blob fans, those are previously on the Wii. That's coming out sometime, don't know. Dead or Alive Dimensions, and I will be talking about this a little bit later in the show. Dead or Alive Dimensions coming out for the Nintendo 3DS. I will be coming back to that one. Deca Sports Extreme, that's a working title. Dead or Alive coming out, that's a launch title. Deca Sports Extreme coming out sometime in the spring. Double Pen Sports coming out sometime this year. Dragon Quest, we don't know what. There is a Dragon Quest game supposedly for the 3DS. Is this Dragon Quest X, which was originally announced for the Wii, or is it Dragon Quest 11? While they're working on 10, they're announcing the next one, or is this a spin-off? We don't know, but there will be a Dragon Quest title on the 3DS, which is exciting to me. Dream Trigger 3D, I don't know anything about that, but there it is. Dr. Lautrec and Forgotten Nights, that'll be coming out sometime this year. DJ Hero 3D, for those of you hip-hop fans, that'll be coming out sometime in the future. Dragon Ball, there'll be a Dragon Ball title, don't know anything about it. Driver Renegade will be hitting the 3DS sometime this spring. Dynasty Warriors Chronicle, coming out sometime this year. Earthpedia, it sounds more like like that would be an application. That's coming out in the summer. EST sometime this year. Don't know what that is. Eternal Eden. That's an interesting one. That was a 2D Japanese RPG, kind of an old school thing. But I think it was a PC thing, so that's interesting. But there is a port of the game coming out for the Nintendo 3DS. Etrian Odyssey will be seeing a sequel for those huge Etrian Odyssey fans. I know somebody who's a big fan of it. I don't know if this is going to be Etrian Odyssey 4 or if it's going to be a brand new Etrian Odyssey for the 3D, some sort of spin-off or something, or it might be a remake or something. So we don't know. There will be a FIFA soccer game coming out March 25th. That's one of the few games on here that has a pinned-down actual release date. Face Racers Photo Finish, don't know much about that. Fantasy Life, coming out sometime this year. A Final Fantasy game, don't know what it is or anything about it. There will be a Final Fantasy game on the 3DS. Fish On, what is that? I don't know. So coming out sometime in the spring, there'll be a game called Fish On. There will be a Frogger game. There will be a game called Gundam the 3D Battle coming out in March. Hakuki 3D, that's a working title, obviously. That's coming out sometime this year. If you don't know what Hakuki is, it was a series that came out first on the PS2, and it's been on the PS3, it's been on the PSP, it's been on the DS, but it's very much like an anime thing, so I really don't know much about it. Harmonix is working on something, some sort of music game. I assume it's going to be some sort of rock band thing, but we don't really know. There will be a Harvest Moon 3D. That's a working title. We don't know when that's coming out. I'm sure Julie's excited about that. Hollywood 61, another title we'll throw out there. Carouse, another title. Kid Icarus Uprising, of course, that's the big killer app to be released at launch March 27th. We know about that. That was the big thing that they showed at E3. Kingdom Hearts, we knew that there was a Kingdom Hearts game, and I still can't tell you when it's coming out, but I can tell you the title, Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. Speaking of which, I might mention that it's been, just to go back to Dissidia Duodecim for a second, it's been rumored that Sora from Kingdom Hearts may appear in Dissidia Duodecim Final Fantasy, so that could be kind of crazy. Another Japanese title, Koro Rimpa, don't know much about that. There will be a Kung Fu Panda the Kaboom of Doom game, don't know when. Another Japanese thing that I probably won't be able to pronounce correctly, but I'll try it. Kyabajape. For my bunghole, I guess. At Leighton Kyoju versus Gyakuten Saiban. Wow, dude. That would be a Professor Layton game, but so far it's only got a Japanese title. That would roughly translate to Professor Layton versus Turnabout Trial. Or Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney. So that's a crossover title coming to the 3DS. And considering, it's got a Japanese title now, but considering the popularity of both the Professor Layton series and the Ace Attorney series here in America, I can almost guarantee that you'll probably see that in America at some point. Of course, here's the big one, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. A lot of people have gotten their hands on that one, gotten to try it, so that's pretty cool. There will be some sort of Lego game, don't know what. But I can tell you that, oh, by the way, Zelda's coming out March 27th. Also coming out March 27th, the other Lego game, Lego Star Wars 3, The Clone Wars, coming out for 3DS. Lika-chan. What the hell is Lika-chan? Let me look at this. It's a dress-up doll thing. That's only coming out in Japan. There's no way that's coming here. Lion's Pride Adventures on the Serengeti. That's to be announced. Love Plus for Nintendo 3DS coming out sometime this year. I think that one will stay in Japan. That's already been, it's a dating sim. It's already been out in like the DS in Japan. Of course, there'll be a Madden NFL 3DS. Don't know much about it, except coming out sometime this year. Martha Stewart, believe it or not, has some sort of either game or application or something coming out for the 3DS. There will be a Mario Kart 3DS. Can't tell you much about it. Doesn't have a release date, but Shigeru Miyamoto had something to say about it. He said the new sense of depth makes it clear where all the objects are, as if it wasn't before. I don't know. But previously Nintendo released Mario Kart DS. I thought was the best version of Mario Kart. So certainly looking forward to Mario Kart 3DS. Marvel Superhero Squad: The Infinity Gauntlet. Don't know much about that, but that is coming out. Metabots 3D. Mega Man Legends 3, of course, that was a big deal. Talked about that last season. So there's a lot to say about that, but I kind of already said it. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater will be getting a 3D version sometime this year. My Garden, it doesn't sound very interesting. That's the launch title, though, sometime in March. Naruto Shippuden Action Project, that's a working title, so there will be a Naruto game sometime this year. There will be a Ninja Gaiden game. They're working on Nintendogs plus Cats. That is a definitive launch title, meaning that it definitely is coming out March 27th. Omega 5, don't know much about that, but there it is. One Piece has a game called Unlimited Cruise SP coming out sometime this spring. Pac-Man and Galaga will be coming to the 3DS. Don't know what that's going to be like. Of course, we know that there's going to be a Paper Mario game. Don't really know much about it, except it will be an RPG, not like the previous game, which was Super Paper Mario on the Wii, which is more of an action game. The Penguins of Madagascar, I guess if you're into penguins, Pilot Wings Resort coming out in the spring. Been a long time since it's been a Pilot Wings game. As a matter of fact, I think the last one would have been Pilot Wings 64, which was a launch title way back for the Nintendo 64. So, wow, that's a big deal there, huh? Pro Evolution Soccer will be coming to the 3DS. Don't know much about it. It's called Winning 11 in Japan. There you have it. Professor Layton has another game coming out called Professor Layton and the Mask of Miracle, coming out sometime this year. There's some Pro Yaku games, one called Famista 2011 and the other called Spirits 3D. Puss in Boots, for those of you who like Puss in your Boots. Giggity. Rabbids will be getting a game called Time and Travel sometime this spring, and Rayman will be getting a game called Rayman 3D. Don't know much about it. Resident Evil Revelations is a big deal. That's coming for 3DS. Don't have a release date, but that's kind of a big deal. Resident Evil there. There's another Resident Evil game, and this one's going to be a launch title. It's called Resident Evil: The Mercenaries 3D. The Mercenaries was originally a mode featured for Resident Evil 4, and it was also in Resident Evil 5. They say this one's based on Resident Evil 5, so we'll see how that goes. Ridge Racer 3D, didn't see that one coming. Runabout, Samurai Warriors Chronicle, that's a launch title in Europe. Not sure if it's coming out here. Saints Row Drive-By, Shanghai 3D Cube, Shin Megami Tensei has 3 games coming out. One that they don't know anything about, it's just called Shin Megami Tensei so far. Another one in the Persona series, Shin Megami Tensei Persona, and one called Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor Overclock. So more stuff for Julie to get excited about. I'm sure she's going to be rushing out to get a 3DS. The Sims 3 will be coming to the 3DS, so the rest of you guys as girlfriends will have something to play. There will be a Sonic the Hedgehog game. No news on what that is or what it's called or anything about it. Star Fox will be returning for the first time since the original DS game, Star Fox Assault. This one's called Star Fox... Actually, that was a... Hell. No, Star Fox Assault was GameCube, wasn't it? What was the one on the DS called? Man, you're making me look it up. Look at this. I'm going to have to look it up. And that's just assy. Star Fox Command, that's the one I was thinking of. And I never played it, that's why I was kind of iffy on that. But there will be a Star Fox game on the 3DS, although this one they're saying is a remake of Star Fox 64, which in itself was sort of a remake of the original Star Fox. So I wish they'd do a new story there, but there you have it. Steel Driver, don't know much about that, but that's hitting the 3DS. Super Black Bass. Super Monkey Ball will be coming in early 2011. That's probably a launch title. Super Robot Wars, don't know much about that. Another big deal, Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition. And let me talk about that briefly. One thing that I wanted to talk about Super Street Fighter 4 actually is that the arcade version will be coming to PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, which features all sorts of tweaks as well as 2 new characters, Yun and Yang from Street Fighter 3. And they're thinking that it would take the form of downloadable content rather than an all-new game. The 3D edition, I talked about it briefly before. It has, it has over-the-shoulder, it has traditional play, it looks really good. They're saying that all 35 console characters plus all the systems from the 360 and PS3 versions will be on the 3DS release. They're saying it's exactly the same as its HD counterparts. That's what Capcom has said. Now, I don't know. I mean, I know there's going to be hotkeys for combos and moves on the touchscreen and that kind of stuff. Don't know if Yin and Yang are in it, so I'm kind of curious about that myself. Tales will be returning on the 3DS with Tales of the Abyss. That was originally on PS2, so Tales of the Abyss will be coming to 3DS. Tank Beat 3, working title, don't know much about that. A Tetris game will be coming out for sometime this summer called Tetris 3DS, also known as Tetris Axis. Not sure what the Axis thing is all about, but there you have it. Game called Time Travelers. That's by Level 5. I only really mention it because it's by Level 5, and they've made some really amazing games over the years, including Dragon Quest VIII, my favorite RPG of all time. There's some Tom Clancy games coming out. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Shadow Wars will be hitting this spring, and in March, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. Transformers Dark of the Moon will probably be terrible, and that's coming out sometime, probably around the time the movie comes out. Wonderworld Amusement Park, don't know what that is. And finally, there will be a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game for the 3DS. So that's a lot of stuff to say about the 3DS. The game's coming out for it. Hopefully I won't have to do that anytime again soon. One more thing to talk about with the 3DS is that it does have a virtual console, which will feature Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games from the past. No news yet as to exactly what games will be available, but I always wondered why the handheld games couldn't be on the regular virtual console for Wii. So, and why you couldn't get like NES and Super NES games on your 3DS. So there should be some crossover there. That's how I feel about it. To talk about the other platform for handhelds, the PSP is getting a follow-up, the PSP 2. Now, a lot of people had been wondering about the follow-up to the PSP, and there have been a lot of strong rumors that the PSP 2 would be less of a console and more of a phone that also plays games, which makes me go like this. I really like the PSP. I don't want some fucking smartphone that also happens to play games. It's so fucking lame. But apparently, it turned out to be semi-bullshit. The PSP 2 is going to be a separate release from what's called the PlayStation Phone. Now, I don't know much about the PlayStation Phone, and to be honest, I don't care about it. But I can tell you that the PSP 2 will be coming out. Don't know exactly when. Let me look it up, but I can tell you a few things about it. According to Sony, and this is coming from the horse's mouth, which in some cases can mean that it's like a really kind of very credible thing, but in some cases it could be hyperbole. They're claiming that the PSP 2 is as powerful as a PlayStation 3, which makes me wonder, what is the battery life going to be like? What is the price going to be? And is it even true? And is it even a good idea to have a handheld that powerful? For those of you wondering about the medium, there will be physical medium. It would be incredibly stupid for them to not have physical medium, and I've said this in the past. Downloadable content will never fully replace a physical medium, just like things like the Kinect will never fully replace controllers. You need to have buttons, you need to have physical media. They will be shipped on SD cards, so that about makes sense. And it also is interesting because there's really no limit to what you could put in an SD card, because they could also always make a larger SD card for larger games. So that's kind of a big deal. Release date, couldn't tell you when. Don't have any news, but it's only just been announced a little while ago, so there you have it. That's what's going on with the PSP 2. Don't even really know if it's going to be called the PSP 2. It's sort of a code name for it now. But considering Sony's PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, they haven't shown a whole lot of imagination in their naming conventions here. So I would say that it's probably just going to be called PSP 2. Wanted to talk about Dead Space. Those of you who are familiar, Dead Space was a game on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, sort of a third-person shooter, science fiction, horror, survival thing. And there was a on-rail shooter for the Wii called Dead Space Extraction. Now, Dead Space 2 is coming out very soon. Wanted to talk really about the ad campaign. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's absolutely crazy. They got a bunch of women, all mothers, older women, and got them to come to this building, which they set it up and told them that they were going to be part of a focus group. And and that they wanted their opinions for this upcoming product. So they had each of these ladies go into a room with a bunch of monitors, and there was this disembodied voice, and the guy tells them, we're going to show you footage from our new video game, and tell us what you think. And they purposely showed them the most horrific, violent, and visceral images from Dead Space 2. It actually looks like a really good game, too, I might add. And, of course, they were shocked and appalled and offended. I hate it. It's terrible. It's the downfall of society. This is what they used for the commercials. Even if you're not interested in the game, you got to look these ads up. It's absolutely hilarious to see these women's reaction. And if this is what they're using to promote the game, that's the tagline of the game, Your Mom Hates Dead Space 2. And if you want to see these, you go to yourmomhatesthis.com, and you can see the ad campaigns, the behind the scenes, all sorts of different things. I recommend you check it out because I was highly amused by it. Highly, highly amused. So check that out. Okay, so not a whole lot of time left, so I want to run through the last of these news stories pretty quickly, since I try to keep the show at around an hour. I wanted to talk very briefly about Duke Nukem Forever, and I've been very skeptical about this, and everybody's saying, oh, this other company picked it up, that means it's going to be released. And I'm like, well, what makes you think that? 3D Realms always claimed that it was going to be released, and they never released it. So now because somebody else is telling you that it's going to be released, you think it's going to be? And then I wondered, if it gets released, do I really care? And, well, I don't know. Is Duke Nukem relevant anymore? But there are some new things. My friend Joey was saying to me, well, it's got a trailer now, and he's excited. And I said, well, there was a trailer for it, 12 years ago, and it never came out. So I'm not, saying. And they said, well, there's a release date. And I said, there was a release date 12 years ago. So there was a guy, and Penny Arcade sort of did a thing on this, and not in the comic strip, but on their website. He had a pre-order ticket for it. I wonder if he's going to get the game now. I mean, it's crazy. Can I tell you the game is coming out not only for PC, but for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. I did see the trailer. It does look fun. That's not what convinced me. What convinced me that this may actually come out and that this may be real is that it has an ESRB rating. Of course, the ESRB rating is, of course, M, and there's this long laundry list. It may be even more M-rated than Dante's Inferno was. So, who knows? The plot seems to be, that Duke Nukem's been missing for quite some time, which is kind of meta. And the aliens are back. I mean, I know that the original plot for Duke Nukem Forever was going to be that the villain from the first game, which was just called Duke Nukem, was Dr. Robot something or other, some robot guy, and that he was going to return. And that, that he was in the villain in the first and I think the second one, and then Duke Nukem 3D had to do with something completely different. And the only thing that gets Duke's attention is when they start kidnapping the women of the Earth. Why do they have to always take the hot ones? So, yeah, Duke Nukem Forever is supposedly coming out May 3rd. We'll see what happens with that. Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I wanted to really spend a lot of time on this, but I don't have time, so I'm going to have to remind myself. Next week, maybe we'll have a guest on that will want to talk about it or something, but that's a big deal for me. I'm a big Elder Scrolls fan. Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, and now Skyrim. It's a shame that I'm running out of time here. That's why I didn't have a guest. So much show, so little time. So perhaps next week we'll talk about that. 11/11/11, November 11th, 2011 is the release of Elder Scrolls V Skyrim for PC. Not sure about Mac, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3. I can tell you I've seen it. It looks amazing. I've read about it. I've gotten into detail about it. I really want to talk more about Skyrim next week because I want to go in depth about it, but I figured I'd throw it out there. Mortal Kombat has a release date that's April 19th, coming out on a Tuesday, so no Mortal Monday this time around. So that's what's going on with Mortal Kombat. Wanted to come back to Dead or Alive. Dead or Alive Dimensions coming out for the 3DS. Apparently this is being developed by Team Ninja, who worked on the very disappointing Metroid Other M. There is a stage based on Metroid Other M. Ridley's there. He's sort of a stage hazard. I saw a video of two Dead or Alive characters. I don't know their names because I don't play the series. One of them rings out the other, and Ridley grabs her and smashes her up pretty good. And Samus sort of appears at the end of the match, leading some people to believe that Samus Aran may be a playable character in Dead or Alive Dimensions. Interesting is Nintendo has almost nothing to do with it other than it being on the 3DS, developed by Team Ninja, published by Tecmo Koei, so who knows, but it certainly looks like that's going on. Of course, having Samus in Dead or Alive, you gotta, is she going to be in the power suit? Because that would be weird. You'd want her in the Zero suit, and then it's like, well, is she going to have the jiggly boobs? Because that's what Dead or Alive is known for. It's certainly not known for its in-depth fighting engine and amazing action. It's known for the jiggly boobs. So will Samus have the jiggly boobs? I guess we'll find out for Dead or Alive Dimensions on the 3DS. For anybody that actually cares, that's what's going on there. So that's really all the news. Wanted to talk about WiiWare stuff. What's been released. There hasn't been any WiiWare or Virtual Console stuff in a while, so these releases that I'm talking about were around late December. Mario Party 2 came to Virtual Console. That was originally on the Nintendo 64. 1 to 4 players, rated ESRB, E for everyone, for mild violence, 1,000 Wii points at $10. Get ready to party like it's the year 2000 all over again. Complete with fancy costumes, bags of surprises, and games galore, Mario and his Mushroom Kingdom friends return for a new round of Bowser-bashing board game action in Mario Party 2. Each of your favorite characters dons a differently themed outfit to take part in 5 fun-packed adventure boards: Pirate Land, Western Land, Space Land, Mystery Land, and Horror Land, and battle Bowser on his own specific board if you're brave enough. Up to 4 players, additional accessories required sold separately. I don't think that applies to the WiiWare version. Can travel around the boards and compete in minigames for coins while also using items to gain an advantage. Win the most stars and become the ultimate victor, the superstar, or if you just feel like proving your minigame mettle, visit Minigame Land, head to the Minigame Stadium, and replay your favorites, including Item Battle, Duel, and Chance Time minigames. A couple of things coming out that already came out for WiiWare. We got Frobot from Fugazu, 1 to 4 players, rated E10, everyone 10 and older, for mild fantasy violence, mild suggestive themes, 1,000 Wii points, demo version available for free. Frobot is programmed to make love, not war. Maybe it should be rated M then. But when his 5 foxy girlfriends got bot-napped, he doesn't skip a beat in taking the fight to the streets, blast your way up from the funky town slums to the bot blocker headquarters to save them. In Burn Baby Burn mode, you earn powerful weapons, including the Robo Hustle Dash and the Jive Stalker Disco Ball, to help taking on the man. And the big payback journey through a story mode filled with action, adventure, and fro-frazzling physics puzzles to rescue your girlfriends. I didn't even want to go on. There's more to it. Inkub is coming out. I don't know what that is. Inkub, I-N-K-U-B, published by Cosmonaut Games. 1 player, rated E for everyone, with cartoon violence, 500 Wii points. In Inkub, you're responsible for the defense of incubators, each one connected to a life support system by means of a transparent carbon tube. So this sounds exciting. For years, different organisms, viruses, and bacteria have formed colonies that attack the species in each incubator. Your objective is to repel the attacks of these organisms and keep the eggs in the incubators safe. So basically, it's a tower defense game. Coming up for DSiWare, or already out, Dragon's Lair 2 Time Warp from Digital Leisure Incorporated. 1 player, rated T for teen, suggestive themes, fantasy violence, 800 Nintendo DSi points. Princess Daphne has been spirited away to a wrinkle in time by the evil lizard Mordroc, who plans to force her into marriage. Only you, Dirk the Daring, can save her. Transported by a bumbling old time machine, you begin the rescue mission, but you must hurry, for once the casket of doom is opened, Mordroc will place the death ring upon Daphne's finger, and she will be lost forever in the time warp. I also heard that all 3 Dragon's Lair games will be released for 3DS, so I don't know if that's really worth it. Cosmo Fighters, coming out from RB Light, 1 to 4 players, ESRB rated E10, everyone 10 and older, cartoon violence, 500 Nintendo DSi points. There's a battle to fight in outer space, but before you meet your fate, train yourself against the CPU to master all the tricks and combos. Whether playing one-on-one or against a group of 3, your training will pay off once you challenge your friends and foes. Anyone can play, but only the well-trained will win. So what is it about? Nobody knows. Just some sort of outer space thing. We got Pole's Monster Adventure by Age-Tech, 1 player, rated E for everyone, with Cosmic Mischief, 500 Nintendo DSi points. Prepare to embark on an epic adventure and enter a land where monsters known as bosses once ruled with an iron fist. Yay. The local inhabitants have rebelled against bosses by stealing their food supply. Now the bosses are slowly dying from starvation, and it's up to you to save them. So save the bosses instead of beat the bosses. And finally, Just Sing Christmas Volume 2 from DTP Young Entertainment. 1 player, rated E for everyone, 200 DSi points. You are the star. Prepare yourself for the next edition of Christmas Karaoke. Holiday classics such as We Wish You a Merry Christmas and Deck the Halls are waiting for you. So I guess you could wait for that for next Christmas. They'll probably have a newer version. So who knows? One last thing to talk about would be the charts for this week. So this week in Japanese sales, top-selling game of the week was Another Century's Episode Portable from Bandai Namco for the PSP. That came out on the 13th. That sold 70,000 units. At number 2, Monster Hunter Freedom 3, finally dropping to number 2 from Capcom for the PSP. That sold 68,000 units for a total of over 4 million. Big hit in Japan. I love the Monster Hunter series. Donkey Kong Country Returns coming in at number 3. They moved 29,000 units for a total of about a little less than 750,000. Number 4, Ni no Kuni by Level 5 for the DS sold 19,000 units for a total of 438,000. Number 5, AKB 1/48 If I Loved an Idol from Bandai Namco on the PSP sold 18,000 units for a total of about 339,000. Number 6, Arcana Heart 3 from Arc Systems Works on the PS3 sold 17,000 units. Number 7, Wii Party on the Wii by Nintendo sold 15,900 units for a total of about 1.7 million sold to date. Pokemon Black and White coming in at number 8 from Pokemon Team on the DS sold 15,000 units for a total of over 5 million units so far. Gundam Musu 3 by Bandai Namco on the PS3 sold 12,800 units for a total of 331,000 units sold so far. And number 10, Mario Sports Mix by Nintendo for the Wii sold 12,000 units for a total of a little over 500,000. Rounding out the rest of the top 20, just to go through them really quickly. Third Birthday on the PSP, Magician's Quest, The Merchant's Store of Sorcery on the DS, Saga 3 Shadow or Light on the DS, Wii Fit Plus for the Wii, Mass Effect 2 for Xbox 360, Mario Kart Wii still hanging in there for the Wii, New Super Mario Bros. Wii for the Wii, Wii Sports Resort with Wiimote Plus for the Wii, World Soccer Winning 11 2011 for PSP, and Call of Duty Black Ops dubbed version for the PS3. Hardware charts, number 1 selling video game console in Japan, PlayStation 3 this last week sold 33,190 units. That's down quite a bit. The PSP is up a little bit with 29,806 units sold. The Wii is significantly down from last week with 21,291 units sold. The DSi LL, we know it as the XL, is extremely down from 44,000 to 17,452 units. The DSi also significantly dropped. Remember, we're coming off of the holidays here, too. 13,416 units. The Xbox 360, a little bit down with 2,636 units sold. The DS Lite significantly down with 1,956 units sold. PlayStation 2 significantly down with 1,629 units sold. And finally, the PSP Go significantly down with 1,208 systems sold. So really, everything stayed almost where it went. The Wii dropped more significantly. The PSP is the only system to sell more this week. Remember, these are Japanese sales figures. So that'll be our show, the VMX Show Season 3, Episode 2. We'll see you next week. We're going to talk about Skyrim a whole lot. We're definitely going to have to get into that. That's going to be the big thing, Skyrim. Send me your questions and comments. If you want to be on the show, just contact me. All you need is Skype. We'll talk about it, and we'll definitely have a guest next week. So VMX out.